History is full of powerful figures, right?
Yeah.
People whose legacies get defined by just one single unforgettable act.
Definitely. And sometimes that act just seems to completely contradict everything else about them.
Exactly. And that's what we're exploring today. You're joining us for a deep dive into Diotimus the Vicious. He was a Stoic philosopher, but his whole story, his enduring identity, it hinges on this one really shocking act of malice.
That's right. Our mission today is really to unpack this story. A Stoic philosopher, Diotimus, whose entire legacy is, well, bafflingly defined by this single bad act.
It's quite something.
It is, and it's a specific moment in history that, reveals so much about human nature, maybe even more about what philosophy truly means when it's put into practice.
And this is where it gets really interesting for you listening. Diotimus was a Stoic. He was supposedly dedicated to virtue, to well-being, living this principled life.
A core Stoic ideals.
Right. But this one act seems completely, utterly unstoic. So how do we even begin to reconcile that? Someone committed to these high ideals, yet they commit this profound crime. That's the contradiction we need to unpack.
Well, starting with Diotimus himself, he's truly a cipher, almost a blank slate in the historical record.
A cipher? How so?
We have basically no idea when he was born or when he died. We think it was likely around 100 BC, but that's just an estimate.
Okay.
We know almost nothing about his teachers, his students, his parents, any acts of kindness he might have done, or any honors he received. He's just obscure.
So a genuine historical mystery man. It's pretty remarkable, isn't it, for someone who was clearly a philosopher of some note at the time. The record is just, well, empty of anything positive about him.
That's the striking part. What little we do know is about his beliefs. He apparently thought the chief end in life was well-being, eudaimonia, and that the way to get there was through the pursuit of virtue, which of course sets up this massive irony, doesn't it?
It really does, a profound irony.
Indeed. And, this is where the tragedy maybe lies for Diotimus personally. Imagine if he'd actually had some brilliant insight into apatheia, that freedom from disturbance.
Or a new take on well-being.
Exactly. Maybe his lessons on eudaimonia were considered groundbreaking at the time, but we just don't know. We'll never know what profound insights he might have contributed. Because all we really know about him, the thing that survived, comes from this single act of indisputable malice. An act so petty, so out of character for a Stoic, it almost sounds made up.
It really does sound almost unbelievable for a philosopher. I mean, to resort to such blatant fabrication, forging, what was it, over 50 letters?
Yeah, more than 50 licentious letters, they're called.
Yeah.
Just to portray Epicurus, who founded the rival Epicurean school as this depraved maniac.
The sheer effort involved is astounding, let alone the ethical breach.
Absolutely. And the effects of these forgeries, they were really long-lasting. Epicurus, or at least his popular reputation, has struggled to completely shed this image, even today.
Still.
Yeah. So here's where it gets really interesting. You've got a philosopher, someone supposedly committed to truth, fabricating an entire dossier of lies just to trash an opponent.
It's literary fraud, pure and simple. A direct attack on truth itself.
Precisely. Now, to understand the context a bit, part of Diotimus's motivation was likely self-defense in a way.
Self-defense? How?
Well, Epicureanism was apparently having a bit of a resurgence in Athens around that time. And it was led by this very prolific guy named Apollodorus.
Okay.
He was nicknamed the Garden Tyrant, apparently. He supposedly wrote something like 400 books.
400? Good grief.
Yeah. And he wasn't exactly playing nice. He was actively smearing Chrysippus, who was a really prominent, respected Stoic. Apollodorus claimed Chrysippus had basically plagiarized stolen quotes for his own books.
Ah, okay. So there's definitely provocation from the other side, a kind of academic turf war heating up.
Exactly. You had this intellectual feud escalating into personal attacks.
But still, even with that kind of background, that context of rivalry and maybe false accusations, does that justify Diotimus's response? Such a flagrant disregard for Stoic principles like truth and integrity.
Well, no. I mean, ethically, of course not.
Yeah.
But it perhaps helps explain the pressure cooker environment.
Right. Or maybe it just highlights how fragile even the highest ideals can be when, personal pride or tribal loyalty gets involved.
That's precisely the central question this whole story throws up for us, isn't it? What's fascinating, and maybe a bit depressing, is how quickly intellectual debate can just evolve into fabrication and slander.
Yeah.
Diotimus chose to respond to slander with slander, and in doing so, He ended up committing a crime that was arguably far worse than what Apollodorus was, likely falsely, alleging against Chrysippus in the first place.
It's just so jarring when you think about the core Stoic beliefs. This was a school, a philosophy that prized logic and truth right up there with virtuous behavior.
Absolutely central.
It teaches being beyond grudges, beyond revenge, beyond petty competition or this need to always win the argument.
Think of Marcus Aurelius.
Exactly. Marcus Aurelius put it so clearly. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Simple as that.
Couldn't be clear.
So how on earth did Diotimus, someone who presumably knew these ideas inside out, manage to go so spectacularly wrong, so far off the path?
It's the core puzzle. And it raises a really important question, I think. If even a Stoic, someone supposedly training themselves in these principles, can fall that far, well, what does that mean for our own attempts, our own aspirations to live virtuously?
Makes you think.
Diotimus's actions were just comically at odds with the very philosophy he claimed to follow. Somewhere, somehow, he just went profoundly astray.
So what happened to him? Did he get away with it?
Oh, no, not at all. The immediate consequences were pretty severe. Zeno of Sidon, who took over from Apollodorus as head of the Epicurean school, he tracked Diotimus down.
Right.
And he filed a lawsuit against him. The court actually sided with Zeno.
And the sentence.
Well, the report is that Diotimus was sentenced to death. Now, that sounds extreme for slander, even back then.
Yeah, a bit much, maybe.
So it's probably more likely he faced a really heavy fine, maybe exile from Athens, and certainly, huge personal shame and disgrace.
Okay. So the consequences weren't just personal for him, though. This infamy, it must have kind of stained his fellow Stoics, too, right? Like a black eye for the whole movement.
It definitely seems like it did. It actually prompted another Stoic, Posidonius, who was generally seen as more measured, to write a book against Zeno of Sidon, the accuser.
Ah, defending Diotimus.
Not exactly defending the forgeries. That's important. Posidonius almost certainly wouldn't have defended the actual crime.
Okay.
But he likely aimed to sort of shift the focus, maybe push back against Zeno, get the spotlight off this embarrassing student, Diotimus, and maybe clarify what Stoicism's actual legitimate objections to Epicurean teachings were, trying to salvage the school's reputation, perhaps.
Right, damage control. Makes sense. And yet, what do you make of the silence from other Stoics? You mentioned earlier we have no record of anyone really disavowing his crime. Not then, not later.
That is interesting, isn't it?
Even someone like Seneca, who wrote so much about philosophers, including the Epicureans, he never mentions this incident. Not once.
It's a curious silence. Perhaps the shame was just too profound, or maybe, the desperation of these intense intra-academic squabbles. Maybe it just hit a bit too close to home for comfort for some of them to want to talk about it openly.
Could be. So ultimately, what's Diotimus's legacy then?
Well, tragically, his sole contribution to the history of Stoicism seems to be making himself into a cautionary tale. That's it.
Ouch.
He basically proved that even Stoics were hardly perfect. And maybe more importantly, that no matter how much training you've done, how much philosophy you've read, a snap decision made in the heat of the moment can potentially undo all of it.
Yeah, that impulsive reaction, it really became this classic case of trying to meet hostility with even more hostility, didn't it? Fighting fire with fire.
And ending up just burning yourself, exactly. Nobody really remembers who started it in the end, but the scars from your own actions, they stick around.
Maybe sometimes it's better to just wait. Or let enemies kind of destroy themselves rather than getting dragged down.
Perhaps. It makes me think of that observation by Samuel Johnson about how bitter scholarly disputes could get back then. He said something like, "Small things make mean men proud. All contrariety of opinion makes proud men angry."
Huh. That rings true. Pride getting in the way of wisdom.
It seems to capture some of what might have been going on. And, the comparison to Brutus is quite striking, too.
Brutus, as in Julius Caesar's Brutus.
Yeah. Shakespeare portrays him as this stoic figure. But that one single deed, the assassination, it just overwhelms and obscures everything else the man ever did or stood for.
Ah, I see the parallel.
It's similar with Diotimus. Here's a philosopher who, for all we know, might have had genuinely profound things to say about moral perfection, about well-being, but he's known to us only for this one, frankly, evil and vengeful decision to try and destroy his rival's reputation through lies.
Such a waste, in a way.
A complete waste of whatever potential good he might have offered.
So wrapping this up then, what does this all mean for you? listening to this. Diotimus' story, it really is a stark reminder, isn't it? How easily our desire to win, even in what seem like intellectual battles, can just compromise our integrity.
Completely overshadow any good we might do or achieve.
It really asks us, I think. In a world that's just swimming in information, opinions, arguments,
Yeah.
when do we find ourselves tempted to fight fire with fire?
Mm-hmm. And what's the real cost?
Well,
The cost to our own well-being, our own character, our reputation.
right. What's the enduring value, maybe, of just standing firm in truth, sticking to your principles, even when you're provoked, even when it feels like the harder path?
That seems to be the enduring question Diotimus leaves us with. A tough one, but essential.